I can speak a little bit or just share on what you were just talking about. My wife and I are in the process of buying a house and have been waiting on the loan to be approved. And there's been some anxiety about that, if it's going to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And this past Friday, I was meditating and sitting with that anxious energy and vacillating back and forth between just sitting in presence in the moment, and then also seeing this energy come up that was an outward energy. It was the sort of energy of wanting or seeking for
Mm-hmm.
the loan or whatever. And it seemed very small, like very subtle movement outward. And every time that outward movement came, there was anxiety along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when there was a letting go of that and just letting go, peace, and there was like a movement back and forth between that anxiety and then the peace. And that outward movement was very strong. It kept wanting to come up again and again. And
Mm-hmm.
being able to stay, at least in that moment, was a bit of a challenge, but there was a seeing that it was possible or it could be done.
Yeah, beautiful, Justin. Yeah, this is absolutely the way of it, isn't it? This is the way of it. This recognition, this teaching, this inquiry that we talk about, it really does have a practical value in our everyday life, and that's a good example of it. And if you recognize that this anxiety is coming out of desire, it is coming out of a type of conditioning or a sort of conditioning where it's just been your habit to become anxious in these kinds of situations. Um, then it becomes possible to see that there's a choice you can make, more, which is oriented toward freedom. And this choice has the ability to allow whatever is necessary for you, whatever is needed for you, to fall into the space of your awareness or of awareness itself. But in order to do that, it's like you said, you have to be aware um, of the way in which the particular body mind that you are living in mm, responds to various kinds of stimuli or various kinds of circumstances. And once you are aware of how something rises, and you see that by that conditioning arising in a certain way, it leads you deeper into anxiety or deeper into confusion or whatever it is for you, deeper into fear, then you have the possibility of falling back away from whatever that conditioning is presenting to you, and which is what you described, just this ability to remember at some point, not necessarily at every point in the beginning, but at some point to remember that the key is not to stress more, to become more anxious, to become more fearful, that the key is to fall back away from that fear, away from that anxiousness, into the recognition that what is here now is awareness of anxiety, awareness of fear, whatever it might be. And that by doing this, you help to strengthen this foundation of recognition of who you really are. Makes it somehow easier to deal with the vicissitudes, the ups and downs of everyday living, not to be quite so easily trapped in emotion or conditioning. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And of course, ultimately, do recognize that as this foundation in stillness or emptiness or presence, however you label that, or God, however you label it, as this presence, as this foundation strengthens, I've often said this is like doing the inquiry is like pouring concrete. When you pour concrete, it's wet, it's fluid. You can push it around, you can make it into a mold, you can get it to look like what you want it to look like. But after a few hours, and then after a few days, it becomes harder and harder and harder, and it's getting more and more firm all the time. And in the end, you can build a building on this very firm foundation. You can build a great building. And so our practice is like this also. When we first start out, it's very, very soft, and there's not so much strength involved. We sometimes, if we put our hand in our conditioning too soon, we still see a handprint. But over time, the inquiry solidifies, becomes a firm foundation. And then we are just resting on that foundation. And whatever is happening in the building, the heat is on, the air conditioning on, it's hot, it's cold, the wind is blowing through, the windows are open or closed, makes no difference to the foundation. So it's very much like that. So we just keep persistently coming back over and over to this recognition that which is aware is here now, under all these circumstances that you're describing and that Kamal has been describing. Very good. Yes, please continue in this way. Hello, Krishna. Nice
Hello,
to see
nice
you.
to see you.
Nice to see you.
I would like to share something. We've been in Italy, Assisi, for 7 days, and this place is full of San Francesco, full of
Yes.
the presence of a saint, and it takes me back to the same place where Arunachal and Bhagavan take me, exactly the same place,
Yes.
and although the form is very different and the ceremonies are very different, name and form, they are not the same, but something inside is very much the same.
Yes.
And what I would like to ask is when I'm sitting in the basilica, in the tomb of Francesco, and there's no mind there, so I cannot even think, I cannot pray, I cannot ask who am I cannot do anything, but still there is a recognition. Maybe it's like the other side of the coin, that mind, no mind, but something is there all the time, and I would call it the heart. And you talked about this last time and the time before. The words there are no words for it, so it's so
Correct.
difficult to explain.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, but very beautiful. And when I, just as you said, that when I'm a bit further, I can experience much more this kind of identification with body, mind, and word. So it's a subtle identification, but it's there, still there. So if I sit in the tomb, it's gone. No mind, no body, nothing. It's gone. Something happens, the same in the ashram. But when I walk out, maybe the conditionings or I don't know what come up, I can see them, I can recognize them, but they are still there. More subtle than before, but still there. Not as painful as before, but still there.
Yes.
Papaji used to say, keep quiet there. And it's very easy to keep quiet at Arunachala or the ashram or at the basilica, but it's hard to see when I cannot keep quiet or something doesn't let me keep quiet. But still, it seems like a game. It has no importance. It's like really a stage, you know. I'm playing this, I'm playing that. Something is untouched, but it still can carry me away a bit.
Yes. So this is the indication that you need to keep going. Or another suggestion, what is the source of this silence or stillness which you feel when you are in Assisi, or you feel when you are in Arunachala, that you feel when you are in the presence of Bhagavan or in the presence of Saint Francis? What is the source of that silence? Does it rest in that place?
No.
So there's a recognition in you that before you got to Assisi, before you got to Tiruvannamalai, this silence must have been present in order for you to recognize it when you get to this place. Is this true?
Yes.
Yes. So this is a very important point for each of us to recognize, to realize that the source lies within us. And it may be true that at some particular moment, based on circumstances, you're not able to feel the depth in your mind and body of that silence that you can feel when you are in Ramana Ashram, or you can feel when you are in Assisi. Yes, maybe you can't feel the depth of it, but it's important to come to this recognition, like Kamal was referring to, that this silence, yes, that Papaji is referring to, that this silence is always there. Sometimes it's more obvious if you are sitting in the shrine of a saint or you are in the presence of a sage, it's much more obvious. This is because the vibrations of the body mind will always move to the highest level. So if you are in the presence of a sage or in the presence of, the samadhi of Sri Bhagavan or the tomb of Saint Francis, if you are in one of these places and you are a practitioner, you are someone who is interested in knowing the truth, then the vibration of the ordinary body mind, as you happen to be in this moment, it will just up level to the vibration of the sage, and you fall into deep peace. But that recognition has to be there in you first. It belongs to you already. If not, you will simply walk by the ashram and you will feel nothing at all. There will be no attraction. There will be nothing. You will just walk by the temple. You will just walk by the church and there will be nothing. So this is the great blessing of your life, is to recognize that when you go to these places, what they do is they put you in touch with the source of your own being, as you said, with your own heart. So this is very beautiful. This is the only reason to travel to these places, is so that we can have a reminder that this source of love, of peace, of silence lives within us. So very nice. It's not just awareness which is empty. It also can be said that the Jnani, the sage, the saint, is only the manifestation of emptiness. What you experience, what you see, what you feel in a sacred place or in the presence of the Jnani is your own nature. If you are still there to some great degree, you may still walk into the presence of a sage or into the presence of a holy or sacred spot and still experience the turmoil of your own mind. But if you stay there a while, the mind will lose this turbulence and will come to the vibration of the sage. But this does not mean that this peace, this silence, is the possession of the sage. This is the source of being. So there is no one there to claim it. You may say, from the position of you, he or she is a saint. But you are only seeing your own desire manifesting. This is what you wish for yourself, is this deep silence, love, compassion that's felt in the presence of the saint or sage. And you have an inkling of what this would feel like. And so when you step into the presence of the sage, of the Jnani, this is what you feel. But the expression or the experience of the sage or of the Jnani is of this eternal emptiness. And always the true sage will point you back to your own heart and say, find me there. Go out into the field of your own emptiness. I will meet you there. This is the only way that you can truly meet the sage. The sage is not the body, the mind, the personality. In order to truly meet the sage, to meet the Yoni, to meet the saint, you must become completely empty, because this is the nature of the sage. So please, Krishna, don't despair if you find that you cannot spend every moment in this present awareness that you feel in the presence of Bhagavan or in the presence of Saint Francis. Just keep remaining as that silent recognition, that which is aware is here now, and let whatever is happening in the body-mind happen. It's just a movie moving across the screen. This has nothing to do with you, I could say, unless you believe it has something to do with you. So, thank you for sharing. I hope, it sounds like you had a beautiful trip. So I can feel the presence of this experience in you when you speak about it. So very nice. Thank you for sharing. You know, it's because these of everyone like yourself, Krishna, having these kind of experiences in the presence of the sage or in the presence of the samadhi of someone like Bhagavan or the samadhi of Saint Francis, the samadhi of Anandamoyi Ma. These experiences are common among devotees who go to these places. And this is why it's said by the sages to spend as much time as possible in satsang, in association with sages. It's because until this becomes the way in which we see ourselves, the way in which we know ourselves to be on the deepest level, beyond even I am, until that time, the presence, the love, the compassion, and so on of the sages is what supports us and keeps us moving forward into the heart of our own being and into self-recognition. The true sage never ever is doing what he's doing or what she is doing for his or her own sake. The sage is only here for you. Waiting and guiding. Waiting to meet you out in that field of love and compassion and emptiness. Trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarugamiva bandhanan mrityur mukshiyamamritavat svaha bhuva bhu om sat shum hum om. I will meet you there. Namaste.